The emergency lights bathed the corridor in a deep red hue, making every shadow feel alive. Theron grimaced, bracing his shoulder against the stubborn blast door. His graphite combat suit strained with the effort, sweat pooling beneath its collar. "Damn it," he hissed, slamming his fist into the malfunctioning control panel. "These Corsair ships are built like bunkers," he growled. Beside him, Nyxera stood poised, her luminous amber eyes cutting through the crimson haze. Her electric blue skin shimmered under the lights, and her silvery white hair hung in a cascade down her back, a stark contrast to the sharp, sleek lines of her navy blue combat suit. The suit clung to her with the same precision her people applied to technology. "They'll return soon," she warned, her melodic voice barely hiding her tension. 3 minutes, maybe less. "They'll notice we're missing." Theron glanced sideways at her. "This is your fault for wanting to board their damn ship in the first place. And I wouldn't be here if your intel division had half a brain," she snapped back, eyes narrowing. Silver detailing on her suit caught the red light as she moved, making her seem carved from metal and fire. The argument halted when the sound of boots echoed down the corridor. Reinforcements. Theron wedged his combat knife into the door seam, teeth gritted. "Move." Nyxera stepped forward instead, pressing her slender fingers to the control panel. Her people, the Lyrians, had a near symbiotic relationship with technology. The panel flickered to life. The door creaked open, just enough. Theron shoved his hands into the narrow gap and pulled. It groaned and widened just enough to squeeze through. "Go," he urged. Nyxera slipped through, but the ship suddenly jolted from an internal explosion. The door spasmed and slammed shut on her leg. A horrific metallic crunch echoed down the corridor. She screamed, a short, sharp burst of pain, and her skin paled, almost white. "It's crushed," she gasped. "Mechanisms clamped. I can't pull free." Theron dropped to one knee, trying to force the door back open, but the hydraulics groaned in resistance. The footsteps were closer now.
"You have to leave me," she said, voice tight with pain but steady. "Cut it off." He froze. "What?" "My species can regenerate. You cut it off, or we both die." Theron hesitated. That moment cost them. Nyxera didn't. She snatched his glowing blue knife from his belt and, with a scream of effort, severed her own leg just below the knee. He stared, stunned, as she pulled herself through the door, leaving the severed limb behind like a discarded boot. She leaned against the wall, face clenched in pain. Theron, dazed, realized he was still holding her leg. "Don't just stand there holding it," she barked through gritted teeth. "Help me move." That snapped him out of it. He dropped the limb and wrapped an arm around her waist, helping her hobble down the corridor. "You're insane."
"And you're alive." "You're welcome," she muttered, half laughing through the agony. They stumbled toward the escape pods, supporting each other. No longer distant diplomats. Now survivors. As they moved, their minds both ran with questions neither dared ask. The unspoken history, the thinly veiled tension, swept away by blood and necessity. "How long until it grows back?" he asked once she was buckled into the pod seat. "A few days. Pain fades sooner." She glanced at the stump, which was already covered by a strange, clear membrane. Theron shook his head. "Your face is pretty funny right now," she added. "Glad I could entertain you," he said, locking the pod hatch. "Next time, maybe ask me out for drinks instead of luring me into a pirate trap." She smirked. "Where's the fun in that?" The pod launched with a sharp jerk, rocketing into space just as alarms behind them roared to life. The stars stretched into streaks as the pod plunged into the void. Toward an unknown moon, danger, and something neither of them could yet name. The escape pod slammed into the moon's thin atmosphere with a gut-wrenching jolt. Red and yellow warning lights danced across the cockpit, painting Nyxera's pale face in a surreal kaleidoscope of danger. Theron gritted his teeth as he fought the controls. The interface sparked with every movement of his fingers. So much for a clean getaway, he muttered. Navigation's fried. Life support's failing. We're going down, hard. Nyxera leaned forward despite the pain etched into her features. Her silver-white hair swung into her eyes as she tapped a flashing icon. Divert power from lighting and environmental stabilization to the landing thrusters. Theron gave her a skeptical look but followed her lead. For someone who dragged me into this mess, you're surprisingly helpful. I didn't ask you to follow me onto that ship, she replied, wincing as the pod lurched violently again. You were walking into a trap, he snapped, wrestling with the failing system. The Corsairs staged the whole thing. That weapon deal was bait. And yet here we are, she countered. Captured. Crashing. Your rescue was truly impressive. Theron opened his mouth for a retort, but the pod hit a gravity pocket. The impact yanked them both against their restraints. The barren, rocky landscape loomed through the viewport. Brace yourself, he shouted. The pod hit the surface with bone-rattling force, skipping like a stone across the rocky terrain before it crashed to a stop against a jagged cliff face. A hiss of escaping pressure cut through the silence. Theron groaned, fumbling with his restraints. Blood from a gash on his forehead blurred his vision. He turned to Nyxera, slumped and unmoving. Hey. He shook her gently. You still with me? Her eyes fluttered open, glowing faintly amber in the dim emergency lighting. Unfortunately. Your piloting leaves much to be desired. Says the woman missing a leg. Touché.
She winced as she sat upright, her face twisted with discomfort. How bad is it? The regrowth has started, she said, pulling her pant leg up. A soft gel-like film covered the stump, and beneath it, something was forming. It feels like 1,000 needles pushing from inside. Theron grimaced. Sounds delightful. Can you move? With help. He supported her as they moved toward the hatch. The door was jammed, of course. He threw his shoulder into it and grunted until the metal screeched open. They emerged onto the moon's surface, a harsh world of jagged gray-blue rocks and a black sky dominated by a swirling gas giant overhead. The atmosphere was breathable, barely. Gravity pulled at them, light but steady. We need shelter, Theron said, scanning their surroundings. Temperature's gonna drop fast. We've got to find somewhere before we freeze. Nyxera nodded, hopping beside him with grim determination. The emergency beacon should still be active. If anyone friendly's nearby, they might pick it up. And if the Corsairs get here first, then we fight. They salvaged what they could, emergency rations, medical supplies, a portable heater, and Theron's sidearm. No luxuries, just enough to survive a few days. They found a shallow cave along the cliff face and dragged themselves inside. As night fell, the world outside the cave turned from gray to pitch black. Cold seeped into their bones. They huddled around the heater, silent for a long while, their breath turning into misty clouds. So, Theron said eventually, breaking the quiet. Regenerating limbs. That's efficient. Nyxera examined her stump, where a pale blue nub of new tissue now protruded. It's evolutionary. Our ancestors lived in the oceans. Predators often took limbs. Only those who regrow survived. Handy, he said, wincing at his own pun. To his surprise, she laughed, a musical sound that echoed gently in the cave. Your species' obsession with humor under stress is fascinating. It's how we cope, he said, handing her a ration bar. That and being stubborn. She took the bar, her eyes studying him again. Why did you follow me onto that ship? He rubbed a hand through his dirt-matted hair. Your intel on the Corsair weapon was solid. But our analysts were sure it was a trap. I was sent to extract you, if necessary. So it wasn't personal heroics, she asked, teasing. Hardly. We'd only exchanged, what, 3 sentences before today. 4, she corrected. You once told me my security protocols were too complicated. And you said humans were charmingly primitive with our cybersecurity. They shared a brief smile. The first real one. He caught himself staring, not at the leg, or the suit, or the alien features, but at the person. And she wasn't so different. You should rest, he said softly. You'll heal faster. Nyxera leaned against the cave wall, eyes already drifting closed. Wake me, if we're about to die. I'll do that, he murmured.
As she slept, Theron sat watch by the heater, eyes darting between the black cave entrance and the sleeping alien beside him. The cold moon was silent, but in his chest, something unfamiliar stirred. A warning. Or maybe, something else. The low whine of engines stirred Theron from a light doze. He froze, every instinct suddenly alert. That sound, steady, synthetic, unmistakable. Hunter drones, he muttered. He crept to the mouth of the cave, staying in the shadows. Above, 3 sleek, black vessels glided through the dawn-streaked sky, each bearing the blood-red insignia of the Corsairs. They weren't piloted ships, these were autonomous hunters. Mechanical predators designed to sniff out escaped prisoners. Trouble, came Nyxera's voice from behind him. She was sitting upright now, hair tousled but eyes sharp. They're scanning for life signs. The cave's minerals might be masking us, for now. Nyxera nodded, trying to stand. She wobbled. Theron rushed to catch her. Easy. You're not ready. I have to be. She grimaced. Regrowth's ahead of schedule. Likely a response to danger. The limbs formed to the knee, but it's not strong yet. A brilliant beam swept across the cave entrance. Both of them flattened against the stone. They're closer than I thought, Theron whispered. We can't stay here. Supporting Nyxera, they moved deeper into the cave system. The emergency heater cast a dim orange glow, just enough to keep from stumbling. The tunnel narrowed, sloping downward. Moisture clung to the stone, and bioluminescent fungi lit their path in eerie blues and greens. Nyxera reached out and touched one of the glowing patches. It's reacting to me, she whispered. The fungus pulsed brighter. Great, Theron said dryly. Either it's helping, or it just lit a neon sign, pray this way. But the sound of the drones grew fainter as they pressed on. An hour later, the path opened into a vast chamber. At its center, a shallow spring bubbling from beneath the rock, the air misty and warm. Perfect, Theron said. Let's rest here. Nyxera eased herself down by the spring and dipped her regenerating leg into the water. She sighed instantly. These minerals, they're accelerating the process. I can feel it. Theron knelt beside her, watching with quiet fascination as the clear film on her limb drank in the moisture. New tissue pulsed beneath the surface. Incredible, he whispered. And slightly grotesque, I imagine, she said with a wry smile. He chuckled. We humans aren't great with biology. You realize we're just sacks of water and bone and poor decisions, right? Romantic, she murmured. But there was something in her voice, an openness that hadn't been there before. He handed her a ration bar. We've got enough food for 3 days. The heater's at 64%. And I've got 5 shots left on my sidearm. No pressure, then, she said, biting into the bar. Just as things began to feel manageable, a tremor rippled through the cave. They both froze. Dust sifted down from above. That wasn't natural, Nyxera said, low and certain. Another tremor, stronger. Pebbles clattered down the walls. Sonic mapping, she concluded. The drones are using pulses to chart the tunnels. They'll bring the whole cave down to get us. She pulled her leg from the spring. It looked almost whole now, thin, pale, and missing a foot, but strong enough to bear weight. "We can't wait here to be buried," she said. Theron blinked. "You're not seriously thinking of fighting them?" "I don't need to be at full strength to aim and shoot," she said, reaching out. "Give me your weapon." He hesitated. "That's debatable. I've won the Lion Marksmanship Tournament 3 years running. Against stationary targets. These drones follow patterns. Predictable ones." He weighed the risk. Then handed her the sidearm. "All right. What's the plan?" They retraced their steps to a shadowy crevice just inside the main cave chamber, perfect for a sniper's perch. From here, they had a clear view of the cave mouth without being exposed. "We need to lure one in," Nyxera said. "One at a time." Theron had an idea. "The heater. If I override the safety protocols, I can force it into thermal overload. That'll give off enough heat to trigger a drone's sensors." He adjusted the settings, bypassing the safety code. The device began to hum. "Now," she hissed. "Get back." He darted to her position. Just as he settled beside her, the first drone veered from its pattern, drawn toward the sudden spike in heat. It hovered just outside the cave. Its sensor array extended like an insect's feelers. Nyxera steadied her aim. Her breath slowed. 3 shots. The first blew out its scanner. The second hit its stabilizer. The third pierced its core. The drone spiraled into the rocks, exploding in a shower of sparks. "One down," she whispered, eyes glowing. The other drones reacted immediately, breaking formation and darting toward their location. "The element of surprise is gone," Theron said, taking the weapon back. "I'll cover you," she said. "You need to draw them off." He stared at her. "That's suicide. I can't move fast enough on one leg." "You can." He clenched his jaw. "You keep healing. Head for the crash site once you can walk." She nodded grimly. "And you, don't die. I didn't sever a limb just to watch you get yourself killed." He gave a thin smile. "I'll do my best." Then he did something neither of them expected. He leaned in and kissed her. Quick, impulsive, and charged with something more than adrenaline. "For luck," he said, and then was gone, sprinting from the cave, zigzagging through open terrain as the drones gave chase. Behind him, Nyxera watched, the warmth of his lips still lingering, even as the deadly symphony of engines and weapons fire filled the air. Theon ducked behind a jagged rock outcropping as plasma bolts sizzled past, scorching the stone where he'd been moments earlier. Above him, 2 remaining hunter drones circled like mechanical vultures, their black hulls gleaming with red strobe lights as they scanned for his heat signature. He checked his sidearm, 3 shots left. "Come on, you glorified toasters," he muttered. "Let's see what you've got." He bolted from cover, drawing their attention. One drone swooped low, targeting systems whirring. He raised the weapon, aimed for the propulsion array, and fired. The bolt connected, barely. The drone shuddered, drifting off balance but staying airborne. Damn it! The return fire was immediate. One bolt clipped his shoulder, searing through his suit and into flesh. He staggered, pain blooming sharp and hot, then tumbled down a rocky incline. Dust and debris exploded around him as he rolled, landing hard at the base of a narrow ravine. Above, the drones hovered uncertainly, momentarily thrown by his sudden disappearance. He pressed a hand to his wound. It came away bloody. Not fatal, but messy. A soft scraping behind him made him whirl, sidearm up. Nyxera stood there. Her regenerated leg, thin but fully formed, supported her. The color was paler than the rest of her skin, but it worked. Her breath was uneven, but her eyes were clear and determined. "What the hell are you doing?" Theron hissed. "I told you to stay hidden." "You're welcome for the rescue," she replied coolly. Before he could argue, she held up a sleek, glowing device. "Found something in the cave. Ancient control interface. Linked to local tech." She pressed a button. A piercing whine filled the air. The drones froze mid-hover, then dropped from the sky like stones, crashing and erupting into flame. Smoke spiraled into the alien sky. Theron blinked. "How? This system," she gestured vaguely back toward the tunnel, "predates our civilization. It recognized me. Biometrically." He stared at her. "So you're telling me you found ancient alien tech that responds to your DNA? I told you my people have roots here," she said, already limping back toward the caves. "And that was just the welcome mat. You need to see what's deeper inside." They moved quickly through a different path she'd discovered, one veiled by dense stone and ancient mechanisms. The tunnel walls shifted from raw rock to something else, smooth metallic panels embedded with glowing blue glyphs, humming with a subtle energy. Theron ran his fingers over one. It pulsed in response, like it was alive. "What is this place?" "An outpost. An old one. Maybe older than anything either of our people have documented." They stepped into a vast chamber where a holographic projection hovered above a circular console, showing the gas giant outside and a familiar Corsair ship in orbit, Dreloc's vessel. "The system tracked his arrival," Nyxera explained. "And it's not just watching. It has weapons. A planetary defense grid, still functional." She moved to the console, pressing her palm to its surface. The symbols flared in recognition, then cascaded outward in a spiderweb of light. "You can activate it?" Theron asked. "Yes, but it's not without a cost." He stepped closer. "What kind of cost?" She didn't answer at first. "Then, this system, it's symbiotic. It doesn't just require a genetic match. It pulls energy. Life energy." He looked at her. "You mean it'll hurt you?" She nodded. "It might do more than that." For a moment, he said nothing. Then, softly, "I'll protect you." Her eyes flicked to him. For once, she didn't answer with sarcasm or deflection. Just, "I know." She pressed her hand to the panel. The chamber thrummed as tendrils of light slithered up her arm, merging with the glowing patterns beneath her skin. She arched with a gasp. Not of pain, but something deeper, older, more primal. Theron stepped back as the ceiling opened and revealed a massive crystalline weapon. It glowed the same blue as Nyxera's skin and pulsed with rising power. The Corsair ship in orbit blinked out on the holographic display, systems going dark one by one. "It worked," Theron whispered. Nyxera collapsed. He caught her. Her bioluminescent patterns dimmed but still shimmered faintly under her skin. Her eyes fluttered open. "Did it? You knocked out their whole ship," he said. "They're dead in orbit. You did it." She gave a weak smile. "We did." He helped her down a corridor to another chamber. Inside, sleek and organic in shape, was a shuttle, clearly of Lyrian origin but hidden for centuries. "Beautiful," Theron breathed. "Deadly." She slumped into the pilot's seat. "You won't be able to fly it. Only responds to my species." She placed both palms on the controls. The ship hummed and came to life, glowing with soft internal lights. Thrusters warmed beneath them. As they lifted from the ground, Theron watched through the viewport for signs of pursuit. Nothing moved below. The shuttle shot through the atmosphere in a streak of silver light. They set course for the nearest Alliance outpost. For the first time since the nightmare began, they could breathe. "You saved us," he said, turning toward her. That was, beyond impressive. "We saved each other," she said, quietly. The cockpit lights dimmed as the shuttle moved into autopilot. They sat there, drifting silently among stars, the hum of the engines like a heartbeat. Theron reached out, fingers brushing the patterns on her arm, now flickering softly. "Does it hurt?" he asked. "No," she murmured. "It feels alive." His touch lingered. She didn't pull away. If anything, she leaned closer. Their lips met, no longer desperate, no longer impulsive. It was deep, deliberate, and filled with everything they hadn't said. Her skin pulsed with color, the light responding to emotion. To him. Later, nestled together in the shuttle's sleeping chamber, her hand traced the lines of his jaw. "Your species reproduces like this?" she asked, amused curiosity in her voice. Theron laughed. "Among other things." "Fascinating." They lay in silence for a while, tangled in warmth and bioluminescence. Then the proximity alarm went off. Nyxera's skin went pale. She sat up, staring at the console in horror. "That's not possible," she whispered. Theron joined her. The Corsair ship, the one they'd disabled, was moving again. "They're back," she said. "And they've adapted." The sensor data didn't lie. Theron's stomach sank as Drelok's ship closed in, accelerating with impossible speed. Systems that should have been dead were now operating at full capacity. Even worse, enhanced. "The weapon should have fried everything," Theron said, disbelief in his voice. Nyxera's fingers flew across the console. Her brow furrowed as lines of alien code scrolled across the screen. "This isn't standard tech," she muttered. "He's modified his ship. It's partially organic." Theron blinked. "What do you mean, organic?" "I mean it's alive, partially built from bioengineered material similar to Lyrian tissue. The same kind that allows us to regenerate. This shouldn't exist. It's experimental research, never cleared for deployment." A soft chime interrupted her, an incoming transmission. Nyxera hesitated, then accepted it. The image that filled the screen made Theron's blood run cold. Drelok Vin. But this wasn't the reptilian pirate Captain Theron had imagined. The man on screen was unmistakably Lyrian, blue skin, bioluminescent markings distorted by a jagged scar running from temple to jaw, and amber eyes gleaming with menace. "Greetings, cousin," Drelok purred. Nyxera froze. Her mouth opened, then closed again. "That's not possible." "Oh, but it is," he said, smile twisting. "A daughter of House Tyrus, activating the ancient defenses herself. Fitting." "You're not Lyrian," she snapped. "You can't be." "Can't I?" His smile widened. "Did they never tell you about the exiled ones? The lineages purged for being too regenerative." Theron glanced at Nyxera. "What's he talking about?" "Old myths," she whispered. "Stories of Lyrians whose regenerative traits mutated. They could absorb foreign DNA. Change. Adapt. But they were said to be unstable. Dangerous. Exiled generations ago." "Not myths," Drelok said coldly. "Your ancestors feared us. They cast us out. Tried to erase us. But we survived. We evolved." A sudden blast rocked the shuttle. The transmission cut out as Drelok's ship opened fire. "We can't outrun him," Nyxera said, checking the systems. "The shuttle's not built for combat." Another impact sent sparks cascading from the ceiling. "There's more," she said quietly. "When I connected to the outpost, I accessed historical records. The exiled ones, Drelok's kind, they weren't just regenerative. They were parasitic. They could absorb entire species, rewrite themselves." Theron stared at her. "Like how you cut off your leg. But worse. He could regrow from nothing. Maybe even mimic others. And if he gets that weapons platform under his control, he could take out the whole alliance," Theron finished. The proximity alert flashed again, another ship, dropping from FTL right between them and Draylock. A crisp, authoritative voice crackled over comms. "This is the Alliance battleship Intrepid. We've received your distress call. Preparing to initiate tractor beam." Theron exhaled. "Captain Reynolds." Nyxera blinked. "You know him?" "Old mentor," Theron said. "Always had a knack for dramatic timing." The shuttle jolted gently as the beam engaged, pulling them toward the safety of the massive battleship. Draylock fired again, but the Intrepid's shields held firm. In seconds, the shuttle settled into the hangar bay. Marines swarmed the deck. "Welcome aboard," a grizzled man greeted Theron, giving Nyxera a wary glance. "Picking up strays again, are we?" "Captain Reynolds," Theron said, helping Nyxera down the ramp. "This is Nyxera of the Lyrian Consulate. She's the reason I'm alive." The captain's gaze lingered on her, unreadable. Then, he extended a hand. "Then she's welcome aboard." Nyxera hesitated, then shook it. "Thank you. We don't have much time." They were rushed to the bridge, where tactical displays showed Draylock's ship maneuvering ominously back toward the moon. "He's returning to the outpost," Nyxera realized. "If he bypasses the biometric lock, he'll take control of the weapon," Reynolds finished grimly. "Target his propulsion," he ordered his gunnery officer. "Let's slow him down." The Intrepid fired, but Draylock's ship danced around the blasts. What connected barely scarred the surface. The ship regenerated before their eyes. "Just like her leg," Reynolds muttered. A comms officer turned. "Incoming hail, from Draylock." "Put him on," Reynolds said. The scarred Lyrian appeared again, smiling coolly. "Captain Reynolds. The man who believes in diplomacy, at gunpoint. Very human." "And you're the pirate who's about to learn why that works," Reynolds said flatly. "Stand down." Draylock gestured off-screen. The camera shifted, to show a bound Lyrian elder flanked by Corsair guards. "Recognize him, cousin?" Draylock said. "High Counselor Pax. Of your precious consulate." Nyxera paled. "That's impossible. He was on Lyria Prime. Until my agents extracted him. His genetic signature will unlock the outpost just as well as yours." The transmission ended. Silence fell. "I need to get on that ship," Theron said finally. Reynolds turned. "Infiltrate a regenerating pirate's vessel that's holding a high-value hostage." "Exactly," Theron said. "We know the layout. Nyxera can bypass the locks. We get in. We stop him. It's too dangerous." "There's no time," Nyxera added. "If he activates the weapon, this whole fleet is dead." Before Reynolds could answer, a new alert flashed across the bridge. "More contacts, Lyrian vessels." 5. The screen filled with images of sleek, silver-blue warships slipping out of FTL. The consulate fleet. Nyxera stared. "They tracked the counselor." A new voice filled the comms. "This is Commander Taris of the Lyrian Consulate. Stand down. This is an internal matter." Nyxera's breath hitched. "My father." Reynolds stepped forward. "Commander Taris, this is Captain Reynolds of the Intrepid. Your daughter, Nyxera, has critical intelligence." The Lyrian commander's expression barely flickered. "Put her on." Nyxera stepped forward. "Father. Draylock is one of the exiled ones. He seeks to activate the outpost's weapon. If he succeeds, both our fleets will fall." Commander Taris was silent for a moment. "The exiled ones are extinct." "Evidently not," Reynolds said. "I suggest we work together." After a tense pause, Taris nodded. "What do you propose?" Theron stepped up. "We infiltrate his ship. Draw his attention while your forces engage from outside. You would risk my daughter on this? Nyxera lifted her chin. I already cut off my leg to survive that ship. I think I've proven myself. A flicker of emotion crossed Tari's face. Pride? Fear? He nodded. Very well. You launch in 10 minutes. As the line cut, Reynolds looked at Theron. This is still practically suicide. Theron smiled grimly. Those are my specialty. He turned to Nyxera. You ready? She laced her fingers with his. I cut off my leg to escape. I think I can handle going back in. The shuttle coasted silently beneath the chaos. Above them, streaks of light crisscrossed the void as Lyrian and Alliance warships engaged Dreloc's vessel. Explosions bloomed against shimmering shields. From the shadows of battle, Theron piloted the shuttle in a tight arc, heading straight for an emergency airlock Nyxera had identified during their previous escape. This is our blind spot, she said, checking her weapon's charge. Dreloc's surveillance grid didn't cover it before. Let's hope that hasn't changed. Let's hope a lot of things haven't changed, Theron muttered, adjusting the shuttle's trajectory. Like how much I enjoy not getting shot. Funny. I thought you were doing this because you enjoy my company. He shot her a look. Let's survive the boarding before we flirt, shall we? The shuttle latched onto the airlock with a satisfying clang. Time to knock, Theron said, rising from his seat and checking his Alliance pulse rifle. Nyxera stood beside him, moving confidently now on her fully regenerated leg. Her Lyrian sidearm hummed softly. Remember, he said as the airlock hissed open, find Counselor Pax. Then we deal with Drelock. They slipped into the Corsair vessel, navigating its dim corridors with practiced stealth. Most of the crew were likely preoccupied with the fleet engagement above. The few pirates they encountered fell quickly, either stunned by Theron's precise shots or floored by Nyxera's hand-to-hand strikes. You never told me you were trained in close quarters, Theron whispered after she dropped a guard with 3 fluid moves. You never asked. My father insists all diplomatic personnel train like soldiers. They reached the brig. 2 pirates stood guard. One fell from a silent headshot. The other turned too slowly, Theron hit him with a burst to the chest. Inside the cell, Counselor Pax looked up, eyes narrowing in disbelief. Nyxera Taris? Alive and here to rescue you, she replied. Can you walk? I'm old, not helpless, the elder snapped, rising with some effort. Let's move. They had just stepped into the corridor when slow clapping echoed ahead. Drelock emerged from the shadows, flanked by 4 armored corsairs. The jagged scar on his face seemed to pulse with his bioluminescent patterns. His expression was equal parts amusement and disdain. Cousin, he said, voice low and mocking. Still playing hero with your charming human sidekick. Theron raised his rifle. It's over, Drelock. Your ship is surrounded. Is it? Drelock raised a small, crystalline device. Or am I exactly where I need to be? He held it up. This transmitter is synced to the ancient outpost. One press, and it'll target every ship in orbit, Lyrian and human alike. You can't activate it without the biometric key, Nyxera said, tense. He rolled back his sleeve. His arm was wrong. A grotesque blend of tissues, Lyrian blue, human tan, even a patch of reptilian scales. I've been collecting samples for years, he sneered. Including from House Taris. Theron's eyes darted between the guards, the hostage, and the transmitter. Too many variables. Bad odds. Nyxera stepped forward, drawing his attention. You think this is evolution? She asked. You're a walking Frankenstein. A patchwork of theft and butchery. We embraced change. Your people feared it. Theron's eyes flicked upward, then back to Nyxera. She caught the signal. Perhaps you're right, she said, stepping beneath an exposed junction box. Perhaps it is time for change. Theron fired. The box exploded in a shower of sparks, plunging the corridor into darkness. In the chaos, Nyxera grabbed Counselor Pax and pulled him to cover. Theron lunged at Dreylock. They crashed to the deck, grappling. Dreylock's strength was inhuman. He hurled Theron off, slamming him against the wall. But Theron rolled, came up firing. One shot grazed Dreylock's side, but the wound closed around it, absorbing it. "You can't win," Dreylock hissed. "I evolve. I survive." "Then evolve this," came Nyxera's voice. She stood behind him, transmitter in one hand, her weapon in the other. She fired. The blast caught Dreylock square in the back. His regeneration faltered, just for a second. Theron didn't hesitate. He drove forward, striking hard, targeting pressure points Nyxera had once described in Lyrian physiology. Dreylock snarled and retaliated with crushing blows, but Theron absorbed the pain, focusing only on the next strike. Nyxera circled them, watching for her opening. It came when Theron locked Dreylock's arms behind him, baring his neck. "For the honor of House Taris," she whispered, pressing her weapon to the base of Dreylock's skull. The shot was quick. Final. Dreylock's body crumpled, glowing patterns fading to nothing. It was over. As Alliance and Lyrian forces swarmed the ship, Nyxera and Theron stood over Dreylock's corpse, breathing hard. The counselor was safe. The weapon was no longer in enemy hands. Later, back aboard the Intrepid, Nyxera stood at the observation deck, staring at the stars. Her father and Counselor Pax were deep in talks with Captain Reynolds, hammering out the beginnings of a new alliance. Theron joined her quietly. "So," he said, "what now?" "The consulate will study the outpost. The alliance will demand oversight. There'll be debates, treaties, paperwork." "I meant us," he said, gently taking her hand. Her glowing patterns pulsed warmly. "My father's asked me to serve as liaison to the alliance. Apparently, I'm effective. Cutting off your own leg does make an impression. And you," she said, stepping closer, "are stubborn, impulsive, and surprisingly loyal." He smiled. "That your scientific assessment?" "No," she ran a hand down his jaw. "It's my personal one." Their kiss was unhurried this time. "Certain." As the Intrepid set course for home, Nyxera whispered, "There's something else. I accessed deeper records from the outpost." "Yeah. Our species, humans and Lyrians. We share a distant common ancestor." He blinked. "So. You're saying we're biologically connected? Two paths from the same evolutionary branch." Theron smirked. "Explains the chemistry." She chuckled, resting her forehead against his. "We're stronger together, Theron. That's what this proves." He pulled her into his arms. "Then let's keep proving it." Outside the viewport, stars wheeled silently by, unaware that, in one tiny corner of the galaxy, two very different lives had chosen to orbit each other. If you've made it this far, you're probably wondering, what happened next? Theron and Nyxera didn't go back to who they were before. They couldn't. War makes allies. Survival makes partners. But choosing each other, even after the chaos, that made something more. As the Intrepid carried them toward the heart of the Alliance, their story wasn't over. Not by a long shot. New threats would rise. The politics of ancient technology, the fallout from Dreylock's death, the scars of exiled bloodlines, those wouldn't vanish overnight. But for the first time, they wouldn't face it alone. Nyxera's new position as Lyrian liaison put her in the heart of the human diplomatic corps. Theron, promoted and battle-scarred, was assigned to Alliance intelligence with a permanent diplomatic detail, which, conveniently, happened to involve a certain blue-skinned consulate officer. Their story became legend, retold in whispers across fleets and forums, embellished in bars from Arcturus to Vega Prime. The human who fell for the alien warrior. The alien who bled and burned for a species she once mistrusted. The two who stared down a future weapon, and kissed in the ashes. But here's the thing about legends, sometimes, they're just beginnings. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this journey, subscribe for more epic sci-fi breakdowns, hit like if you'd cut off your own metaphorical leg for a great story, and share this video with that one friend who loves alien romances just a little too much. Until next time. Stay strange, stay curious, and don't trust ships with glowing red lights.